This is the story of a journey, a homecoming. My name is Ali Badou. I live in France, where I was born. But to me, the land of my family, of my ancestors, the melody of the Arabic language, the first bright colors, the light of my childhood are all in Morocco. I've traveled all over this country, where I experienced joy, sorrow, and also love. But I know Morocco is still a mystery, full of surprises. Like for many other travelers, Morocco is slipping away from me, hiding behind images. Images of majestic scenery. Images of narrow streets and Medinas where you and I walked. Morocco is perceived as a kingdom of traditions. But it is also a country steeped in modern times. To those looking at the horizon, Morocco is a seafaring, windswept nation. To others, on the contrary, Morocco hides its truth in the mountains and valleys of the Atlas. To ancient geographers, Morocco is the country of the setting sun on the edge of the Arab world. On the map, it neighbors Europe. But it is also a port of entry into the depths of the African continent. What if this country was at a crossroads of these routes? Where does Morocco's invisible heart lie? Here is the story of this quest. A journey with Jan Arthus Bertrand. With him, with me, explore Morocco. Morocco from above. Where do we start? Why not start where it all began? Far away from the sea, on the cliffs of the Zaroun Massif, where Morocco was born. This small town, hanging off rocky peaks, holds the origins of the Moroccan state. The town of Moulay Idriss tells the story of ancient days, when towards the end of the 8th century, this descendant of the Prophet, who was fleeing the Orient and persecution, sought refuge in this remote Berber land. Ever since, Moulay Idriss has remained a place of pilgrimage. People cross this door to admire the mausoleum of the founding father of the first dynasty, the fountains, the Quranic schools. Some, guided by their firm religious belief, go there in search of the baraka and the favors of a saint descending from the Prophet. Others climb the cliffs of Moulay Idriss to admire the plain and below an even more ancient town, Volubilis. Volubilis, a city with many lives. Its ruins read like a book. In this thriving city of the Roman Empire lived Berbers, Jews, Christians, and then Muslims. The splendor of its wealthy dwellings is still apparent, with magnificent mosaic floors. Each one tells a story. The 12 works of Hercules, that slightly Moroccan hero. Hercules, a demigod of Greek mythology, who came to this land to fight the giant Atlas, and who separated forever Africa from Europe. Hercules, who changed everything. In Volubilis, you can also come across the goddess Diana bathing amongst nymphs. Those ruins also reveal superimposed religions, from the gods of mythology to the remains of a Christian basilica. As many signs of the close bond between Moroccan roots and Mediterranean cultures and civilizations. Morocco is deeply rooted in Africa, but it is also almost European, because Morocco is above all profoundly Mediterranean. Its history proves it, starting with successive ruling dynasties. After Moulay Idris and Volubilis, Meknes and Fez are the best places to go back in time. Meknes, Fez's rival. My father's town. During family reunions, people banter about this rivalry. Everything is subject to controversy or jokes between the neighboring towns, variations on recipes, differences in characters or traditions. Meknes, the Imperial city. The former capital of a kingdom spanning from the Mediterranean to the banks of the river Senegal. In the same way Versailles tells us about Louis XIV, Meknes tells us about his contemporary, King Moulay Ismail. It's nostalgic to walk through Meknes, imagining the life of yesteryear in palaces, the splendor of the court, the basins and canals supplying gardens, baths, and hammams. Imagining all those stables that could accommodate up to 10,000 horses. Like a vision. I saw a cavalry charging towards an imaginary enemy. A fantasia. The groups of riders still bear the names of ancient tribes. The Zemmour, the Zaire, the Ramas. Display of strength, panache, and bravery. Those horses who seem ready to fly away fascinated Orientalist painters, and most notably, the French Eugène Delacroix. A fantasia isn't about war. It's a playful exhibition, also called the gunpowder play. These performances are more than just folklore. They're a way of harnessing violence, of proudly showing a sense of belonging. Another side of my historic and geographic origins, another imperial city, Fez, my mother's town. I wanted to stroll along the narrow streets of Fez El Bali, the old Fez. Some are just 50 centimeters wide. A labyrinth, only seemingly chaotic. To walk around Fez, you need to let go and be ready for surprises. In the heart of town, the Karaouin Mosque, home to one of the world's first universities. Under the emerald roofs hide a masterpiece of architecture and ornament. 20,000 believers can gather here. The Karaouin, one of the main intellectual and spiritual Islamic centers. The university was founded in the 9th century by a woman, Fatima el-Firya, who is said to have invested all her fortune in this project. The Medina is a fragile ecosystem. To protect it, Fez was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. For some years now, the old town of Fez is reviving. Its monuments, its houses are being restored. Inhabitants have regained their pride. The Medina was saved. Its traditions, too. Like these tanners working in 100-year-old vats. This work is hard and exhausting. The smells are so strong, the tanneries are kept away from residential areas. Nowadays, chemical dyes exist, but they have not replaced natural pigments coming from the country's plants and soil. These tanners keep alive the memory of the best in Morocco's craftsmanship. From Moroccan slippers to leatherwork, from saddles to the most precious manuscripts. This know-how fuels a heritage still very much alive today. Fez is the archetypal Moroccan city. So much so that to talk about Fez, its inhabitants would refer to it only as Al Medina, the city, a city which is like a microcosm of the country's identity. But where does Morocco's identity lie? Probably also in the cultivated land. It transpires in those cereal fields, one of the Mediterranean treasures Morocco inherited. Cereals are at the basis of Moroccan cuisine. The heart of the grain is used to produce fine flour needed for the pastilla. The coarse wheat is used to make couscous. Each region has its bread. Barley and wheat, of course, hard wheat and tender wheat, are basic staples, essential to avoid food shortages. And sadly, they are dependent on climate variations. Whatever happens, each year, they are imported to cover the needs of Moroccans. But the most famous product belongs to market gardening, Morocco's tomato. What grows here is mostly for the internal market. Peas, lentils, broad beans, products which form the basis of people's diet in this region of the world. Sugar is also essential, and so are beetroots to produce it. It is still a present given for key occasions. It is a way to share the joy. And when someone dies, sugar helps ease sorrow. According to a saying, The water boiled, but the sugar is nowhere to be found. It is inconceivable to make mint tea without sugar. But behind this saying hides a deeper philosophy. We may think we have everything, but if the essential element is missing, then we are left with nothing. The weekly market, called the souk, is a key element of life in the country. Even in the mobile phone and internet age, the souk remains a major social network. People talk about friends and family, but also about the rain which is expected. Rain being such a decisive factor in a country constantly threatened by drought. Rain fills market stalls or leaves them bare. Rain dictates shortages or abundance. When rain fails to come, flocks bail people out and are turned into savings. This is probably why it is said that the Moroccan fellah is first and foremost a shepherd. For a long time, serving guests a meat other than lamb was an insult. Things have changed, of course, but the méchoui remains a must for ceremonies and festivals. Things change, but half of the population still lives off agriculture, and there are 35 million Moroccans to be fed. I leave behind the rural world to its life and negotiations. When traveling on the road, Morocco unveils itself. The cultivated plains represent only a small part of the country. The territory is occupied at the center by a long mountain chain, the Atlas. In the south, by a desert, the Sahara. And all along its western flank, the Atlantic Ocean. This is where our journey continues, toward the mythical cities of Essaouira, Rabat, and Casablanca. In the south, we find the Atlantic Ocean as far as the eye can see. Fine sandy beaches, lagoons, towns occupied as early as Roman times, where we find traces of Moroccan, Spanish, Portuguese, and French builders. Medinas located on the coast have always been threatened. On the ocean front, enemies came from the sea. City walls like those in Essaouira tell the story of this period in history where people were constantly getting ready to be assaulted from the sea. It came with the territory. Essaouira became the town of painters, who every year during the town's festival used the walls of the Medina as canvases and turned it into an ephemeral work of art. Harnessing the sea, living with it, trying to defeat it. Moroccans for a long time have called the Atlantic the Dark Ocean. In Morocco, with a 3,000-kilometer coastline, life, poetry, tradition, popular wisdom, and even religion often have to do with the sea. 16th century, the Inquisition condemned Moroccans who tried to learn and master navigation techniques as they were denied this right. Only Christians were entitled to this knowledge. Today, this knowledge is passed down from generation to generation. The woodworks, the design of the hull where drawings will be painted, inscriptions to protect the ship from the evil eye or from misfortune. I saw Rabat as I had never seen it before. I strolled down the narrow white and blue streets of the Udayas, an area taking its name after an ancient tribe. I walked along the city walls to the Pirates' Tower, reminiscent of Rabat's Corsair past, those fearless sailors who, in the 18th century, traveled the seas up to Iceland. I took refuge in the Andalusian garden, where time seemed suspended. The city's pirate legacy is alive in books, tales, and people's imaginations. Today, Rabat is the capital of independent Morocco. So I went and meditated on the grave of the father of Morocco's independence, Mohammed V. This white marble mausoleum housing him and his sons overhangs the river Bouregreg. I admired the Hassan Tower. In the 12th century, its instigator, King Yaqub el-Mansur, dreamt of making it the biggest mosque of the Western Muslim world. But only the minaret was left standing after the terrible earthquake in 1755. The country's history, and then my history. I went and meditated on my family's grave in the big Shuhadra cemetery, the martyr cemetery bordering the ocean. My childhood town has changed a lot. It's no longer the sleepy town where I spent my holidays. The town has been modernized, equipped with a tramway which links it to its twin sister, Saleh. Further on, the Mohammed VI Bridge, the longest cable-stayed bridge in Africa. It links Rabat to the rest of the country. This bridge symbolizes a changing country, an important milestone. Far from the simplistic image of a country set in its traditions, the kingdom is fast developing. On the way to Casablanca, Bouznika Beach, where wealthy people from Casablanca have summer houses. Impressive, luxurious. These big villas replaced the wooden cabins which dated as far back as the Protectorate era. There are still a few left in the neighboring Dahomey Bay, but they are exposed to erosion and tides. Morocco is a massive open-cast building site. Accommodations, infrastructures, large-scale projects. Sand is the main ingredient to make concrete. So sand is needed. It's hard to believe that sand has become a strategic product, rare and sought after. It's not easy for these men to transport this sand. It's full of water and therefore very heavy. And I ask myself, it gives them work, but at what cost? Demand is high and it is an expensive product. But as much as it is free and abounding, sea sand is not unlimited. In many places, its excessive extraction threatens the coastline and accelerates beach erosion. A few donkeys can't swallow up cliffs, but elsewhere, others use machines and trucks to extract it and haul it. And then I found modern life in Casablanca, a town acting as a laboratory for Morocco's future. New ways of life, new jobs, new social relations. All this is being invented in this ever-changing city. Casablanca is the beating heart of the Moroccan economy. With 4 million inhabitants, it is also the biggest city in the Maghreb. Casablanca is a city radiant with life, where wealth and poverty live side by side. A young town, representative of the country, with a quarter of its population under 15. Hidden behind its walls, the ancient city borders the colonial city. The town was conceived and designed to be Morocco's economic capital 100 years ago. Today, it feels a bit cramped within its walls. This city, resolutely turned towards its future, retains some of its history, its Art Deco or Art Nouveau monuments, like the Sacré-Cœur Church, converted in an exhibition hall. But nowadays, the ocean catches everyone's attention. Casablanca is proud of its mosque on the water, the Mosque Hassan II. It's one of the only mosques in Morocco open to non-Muslims. With a 200-meter minaret, it is the highest religious monument in the world. A place of worship dedicated to devotion in a town driven by money. Fishermen are people of the sea, but also people of the night and the small hours. These men follow the rhythm of seasons and fish migration. Morocco is the top fish producer in Africa. Fishing is today one of the main resources of the country. It employs over 300,000 people. It is representative of Morocco, diversified, both traditional and industrial. Common pandoras, sea breams, sargos, sardines, hakes, octopus. Most of the fish caught will end up in markets and plates from Europe to Southeast Asia and Japan. For some years now, people have started fighting over harvesting, observing biological cycles, improving working and living conditions on trawlers. But competition is fierce, and everybody comes to fish along the Moroccan coastline. Globalization also gives work to seaweed divers in the Al Jadida region, whilst resources are being depleted. How much longer will we see these scenes? Red seaweed is not an unlimited wealth. Gathered and sun-dried, this seaweed is used in pharmacology or for cosmetics. Chemically transformed, the seaweed is used to produce agar-agar, a natural gelling agent used by the food processing industry. Demand is high. Only a tiny part of the revenues will come back to these men and women who collect the seaweed a few months per year. Still heading south, I felt the trade winds and rediscovered one of the jewels of the Atlantic, Essaouira. Essaouira, a town between two worlds, following the rhythm of the Nawa music. This unique and intoxicating fusion of cultures, sounds, and rhythms from both shores of the Sahara. For a long time, a caravan with 10,000 camels connected Essaouira to Timbuktu, with relay posts as far as Saint-Louis in Senegal. I've wandered in the Mellah, this area which still retains the memory of the Jewish culture so important in Morocco. Walls and houses bear the legacy of this glorious 19th century, when the town, called Mogador at the time, used to be a hub for international trade. Gold, fabric, ostrich feathers to make finery for European ladies. Slaves, too. Men, women, and goods alike passed through these streets, and maybe through those doors to end up in the USA, in Italy, in Amsterdam, or in London. At the time, Jews were protected by the Sultan, and tradesmen from all over the world were represented. Everywhere in Morocco, Jewish areas are called melah, a name derived from the word salt. Some activities, like salting and conservation, have often been allocated to Moroccan Jews. For centuries, Morocco's history blended in with this trade, when salt was at the heart of exchanges from the Mediterranean to the south of the Sahara. Salt in exchange for gold from Ghana. I wanted to see the hard work of salt workers, those men who work barefoot not to damage the marsh's dikes. I say to myself that these different scenes tell the same story, that of a country born at the crossroads of major trade routes. Salt marks a milestone in this journey. This time, the Mediterranean starts receding in the distance. Essaouira's salt and breeze introduce us to Africa. As proof, after 2,000 kilometers along the coastline, the scenery has changed dramatically. The southern wind is vibrating. I leave Essaouira to go even further south, beyond Agadir, toward the wild coasts and beaches of the Sidi Ifni region. To contemplate one more time the arches of Lixira. The arch we see here disappeared, swallowed up by erosion. The natural monument collapsed. I sought peace in the protected area of the Knifis Natural Park, a unique panorama where the ocean, the desert, and the lagoon meet. Thousands of hectares of wilderness and a haven for the fauna. It is the route of migrating birds flying along the Atlantic coast. This route leads them to South Africa. This coast was also a point of reference for men. Knifis was a stopover on the Aeropostal line. Mermoz and Saint-Exupéry followed the coastline to avoid getting lost. It was their only way to cross the desert. As I continued my journey towards Al Ayoun, I joined the historic path again with the Green March that left Tarfaya in 1975. All the children in Morocco know this event by heart. This peaceful march, which led 350,000 Moroccans to the borders of the Saguya El Hamra, a march that freed these southern territories from Spanish occupation. During the past decades, Laayoune underwent a meteoric development. The former camp from the colonial era has become the main urban center of the southern provinces. The population has more than doubled in 40 years. Around the big square of the Meshouar, the town has spread with new infrastructures, banks, administration buildings, companies. It's hard to imagine that until recently, this town in the middle of the desert was only a nomadic camp. Massive building sites are being launched to develop the economy in the region. And Morocco is still waiting for the UN to ratify its sovereignty over the Sahara. Over the past decade, spectacular changes occurred in the landscapes transformed by agriculture. Greenhouses with tomatoes redesigned the geometry of the cultivated land in the Agadir and Dakhla regions. Together with citrus fruit, oranges, and clementines, they are the driving force of Morocco's modern agriculture. They'll be sold in the autumn or in the winter in Europe, Canada, or Russia. This high-tech agriculture produces tomatoes in the heart of the desert. Cultivating this arid land is a challenge. In this region, most crops are grown above ground. The sun shines all year round, but fresh water is a rarity. Seawater is desalinated, and fresh water is pumped from 600 meters underground. Located deep down in Sahara's geological history, this fossil water is non-renewable groundwater. "500 kilometers south of Laayoune, I wanted to see Dakhla's Bay, another face of the ever-changing Morocco. Who would have thought 20 years ago that we would witness these futuristic scenes? That the wind and the lagoon would make of Dakhla one of the most sought-after kitesurf locations in the world, an ideal place for those addicted to this sport. But Dakhla isn't only about kitesurfing. The writer Leila Slimani describes this unique location as the bay where everything is possible, the fusion of the desert and water, where the earth penetrates the ocean. Leila Slimani also says that to love Dakhla is first and foremost to try and protect it. I left Dakhla to go up in the mountains. I reached the end of my Atlantic route, and now I'm going to embark on a different course. I want to make my way up in the valleys and the foothills of the Atlas, always in search of the country's heart. Towards the village of Mtoudi, then the Enfis Valley, in the bed of the river, on the way to Marrakesh. Mtoudi is nestled at the bottom of the abrupt cliffs of the Anti-Atlas. Nearly 300 families live here in the heart of the valley. It's a fierce contrast. We're only a few hundred kilometers away from the major coastal cities. Nonetheless, we're going back in time. Here we can trace back human occupation as far as 10,000 years BC. Rock paintings show elephants, giraffes, rhinos, but also ostriches. But this is also the region of the Agadir, those collective granaries built by inhabitants. I went back to Id Aissa's granary, hanging on a rocky peak, a 30-minute walk away from the village. A granary dating back to the 12th century, where people used to hide supplies, grains, nuts, olives, and other precious staples to protect them from razzias. These lootings that could occur at any time and still existed in the early 20th century. These fortifications remind us how precarious life was during those ancient times, when men and their possessions were highly coveted. Making my way up to Marrakesh, I followed the bed of the Enfis River. In these green valleys where people still live in hamlets, each of them houses a family or a clan. Here, nothing is left to chance, like in this village of Tougalkhir. The choice of the spot, the building materials, the orientation of the walls and the streets, all to try and keep the wind, the rain, and bad weather at bay. In today's language, we would say this is a model of bioclimatic architecture. Everything is a challenge. It requires genius and exhausting effort to conquer the mountain slopes and organize communal life. Surviving as an individual outside of the group is impossible. As an outsider, you may think these villages and hamlets are inward-looking. But in fact, they are all bonded by alliances. They help each other, they communicate. They gather to celebrate weddings, but also for sadder events like funerals. Solidarity is very strong in these valleys, much stronger than in town. Among the key meeting points, the souks. According to the tradition, weapons are left outside. In these places, families and clans meet peacefully. But life in the valleys and in the mountains wouldn't be possible without water. Water is so precious that to lead is to reign. It is King Hassan II who equipped Morocco with dams. A strategic approach launched 40 years ago, at a time when water management wasn't a top priority. These works of art laid the foundations of a proper hydraulic policy. Today, around 140 dams supply farmers with water. Water management gave rise to an art, a know-how, leading to the creation of magnificent basins. Some are over 700 years old. The basin of the Manara is supplied thanks to a hydraulic system. It conveys water from the mountains 30 kilometers away from Marrakesh. This basin irrigates the surrounding olive grove. The Manara. This place gave birth to countless legends. Some say King Moulay Ismail drowned numerous lovers in this basin after seducing them. Others claim the treasure brought back by Sultan Abu Bakr ibn Umar from the Orient is buried under the basin. A unique place, far from the madness of the city center, perfect for a lover's stroll. Marrakesh was founded in the 11th century by a woman, Zineb Zafnoya, the wife of King Yusuf ibn Tashfin, who dreamt of conquest. Her husband having left for the war, Zineb Nefzoya settled in this palm grove at the bottom of the Atlas. She delimited the outline and governed what was to become a prosperous city. Behind sturdy city walls, the Imperial city of Marrakesh has become one of the world's tourist capitals. Even at the heart of the most visited places, the soul of the city is still alive. The square Jam El Fna remains an open-air stage. A place where you can still hear genius storytellers, laughs, fortune tellers, and where sacred words mix with more profane views. Jam El Fna is reminiscent of a time when the real and the imaginary were one and the same. UNESCO listed it as an oral heritage of humanity. The soul of Marrakesh is also found in the Majorelle Gardens, this French painter who fell in love with Morocco. Passionate about plant life, he created a garden which is a living work of art in the heart of the town. He created a blue which was named after him, this ultramarine blue echoing the sky of Marrakesh. Blue and red. Red is the color of the town and of its highest monument, the minaret of Koutoubia, whose external walls are all different. It's watched over Marrakesh since the 12th century. town has spread out a lot, especially to welcome tourists. Over 2 million visit the place each year, doubling the population of the city. Many tourists come to Marrakesh to play golf. It's both an economic opportunity and an ecological challenge, because this town on the doorstep of the desert is faced with water shortages. Demand is soaring and resources need to be protected. Recently, new methods have been used to preserve water. Some golf courses are watered with wastewater. From Marrakesh to Tellouet and Ouarzazate, you cross the valleys of the High Atlas, a young mountain. A massif which is 800 kilometers long and 100 kilometers wide in places. This time, the journey leads us deep down in the country to its snowy summits. The Atlas is a wall, a keystone, a water tower, and to more poetic people, it is Morocco's invisible heart. And at the top, the Toubkal, the highest summit in all of northern Africa. The Atlas is also a refuge. In this region, hospitality rules. This is a melting pot of Berber culture and identity. Today, languages and traditions of this land are acknowledged and taught. In the valleys, the green is always different. It shows the amazing skills and work of these men. Farmers are talented gardeners. They cleverly use the slope to irrigate their plantations. Roses have been cultivated in the Mediterranean since the Bronze Age. The famous flower thrives in semi-arid environments. Roses are collected at dawn when they're still humid. Delicately hand-picked by women, these flowers will be sold per kilo and distilled on the day. Some villages built in adobe have been abandoned. Numerous youths leave rural areas to seek fortune elsewhere. On the way to Ouarzazate, after crossing the Tizintishka Pass, Tellouet. For centuries, this was the only trade route between Marrakesh and the south of Africa. The Fief of Glaoui, former Pasha of Marrakesh. Tami el-Glaoui, who chose to serve the French, and who paid a steep price for his treason. King Mohammed V forgave him, but the Kasbah has been empty since the independence. keeper acts as a guide. In a setting of marble and crumbling golden zalige tiles, he recalls Churchill, Hemingway, and other prestigious guests. Wandering around is like reflecting on power. The prominent figures of the 19th century wanted to live like sultans, but their power was crumbling like their kasbahs. In Tillowet, the white stork watches over men. The species is protected. In popular beliefs, the sacred bird is seen as a symbol of good luck. The legend depicts the stork as an imam dressed with a white jalaba and a black burnous. Children are told God turned this man into a stork because he ate during Ramadan. Going down to Ouarzazate, on a pink hill, Ait Ben Hadou and its kasbahs. Some are ruined, others have been restored to feature in movies, or since the site was listed as a World Heritage by UNESCO. This land is also home to the palm tree civilization. Along the Ziz, the Dades, or the Dra valleys, it is the king of trees. Each of them can produce between 30 to 100 kilograms of dates, depending on the year. But the tree is endangered. 2/3 of date palms have been decimated by the Bayud disease. Today, more resistant date palms are being planted to help villagers. A lot is being done to ensure culture and social dynamics are safeguarded in these valleys. To achieve that, education must be developed at all cost. In a country where 40% of the population live in rural areas, it means giving access to the school system in the most remote regions. Girls represent almost 50% of pupils in primary schools, but very few of them carry on studying in secondary school. It is at school, through the law, and also in people's minds that the emancipation of Moroccan women will take place. A popular saying of the Tarfaya region claimed that there was only wind, that is to say, nothing. This nothing has today become an asset. There are windmills all over the country now. The green economy seems to have taken root in Morocco. At the heart of the desert zones, like in the north, around Tanger, windmills are spreading. looking like futuristic palm groves. Others will appear over the next few years. But the most spectacular image of this energy transition is that of the solar power plant Noor near Ouarzazate. Noor means light in Arabic. By the year 2020, Noor will spread its mirrors over thousands of hectares, the size of 3,500 football pitches. It will be one of the biggest solar power plants in the world. The resource is unlimited. Exploiting the sun, transforming its light into electricity, this is what will allow Morocco to move away from its oil dependency by 2030. Over half of Morocco's energy production will be green. Noor marks the beginning of the desert. The Sahara's vastness is there on the doorstep of Morocco, with Merzouga's dunes. Some are 250 meters high. Somewhere in the east lies Algeria. Unknowingly, travelers set foot on the invisible paths taken by ancient caravanners. Those men were merchants. They were also often scholars, and in their wake were doctors, jurists, men of letters. They were all walking across Africa, and with them, Morocco's cultural influence spread down to Senegal and the Loop of Niger. For those travelers arriving from the depths of Africa, seeing those dunes marked the end of a long journey. Merzouga meant Morocco, another world, a cosmopolitan world on the Mediterranean. Everything brings us back to the Mediterranean, and more precisely to this town in between Africa and Europe called Tanger. From Rabat, Saleh is the pirate town, Fez the Arabo-Andalusian, or Marrakesh the African. Morocco is at the crossroads of so many routes. Caravans are no more, but to this day, many men and women still dream of reaching the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean, whose waves shape and sculpt the coastline. Neglected for a while, but now coming back to life. Romans, Phoenicians, Arabs, how many people and empires have contemplated those cliffs? For some years now, Moroccans have been reclaiming their Mediterranean coastline. The middle classes go to the seaside, and each summer they are joined by families of immigrants who come back from Europe for the holidays. The beach and the sun have made a beautiful coastline on the shores of the Mediterranean. There are also Spanish people who come for a weekend as neighbors. It's a turn of history in this region marked by rivalries with its northern neighbor. Under the beach umbrellas, it's not about conquest anymore. The memories of the time when the Bay of Al Hoceima was highly coveted by the whole of Europe are gradually receding. Inland, the intermingled history of both shores gave birth to a blue town, Chefchaouen, a city built by Muslims and Jews expelled from Spain in the 15th century during the Reconquista, highly symbolic. Today, Chefchaouen is a mecca for Moroccan tourism. People come here to admire this unique monochrome Medina. Some are carried away by the dreamlike curves the region has to offer. According to the legend, the town was painted blue by the Jews. The color is said to conjure up the Mediterranean sky and heaven. A more mundane explanation claims that blue whitewashed houses are ideal to fend off mosquitoes. Chefchaouen hangs on the foothills of the Rif, a region that constantly fought for its culture and identity. The Rif is also the land of Abdelkrim al-Khattabi, this Moroccan hero who became a symbol of the fight against colonialism. Yet another turn of history. Nowadays, the Rif region widely lives off the emigration of its children living in Europe. And Europe is there, so close, in Tanger. Here, people travel to and from all over the world, especially to Europe, because the country's fate depends closely on its relations with the north of the Mediterranean. Each year, over 1.5 million passengers change continent on these quays in Tanger. In the 1920s, Tanger was an international city. Adventurers and spies featured in the decor. The beautiful city hasn't lost its soul. It still attracts travelers, writers, and painters from abroad. The city remains a melting pot, a place of encounters. For those who come seeking asylum from all over Africa, Tanger remains a dream of Europe. How many are waiting to cross the Détroit of Gibraltar at the risk of their lives? How many are praying in those churches abandoned for so long? Tanger is a world city. In a way, it is representative of Morocco, a country at the crossroads of all roots, all cultures, and all religions. The colorful jalabas of these women call to my mind the cohabitation of cultures and fraternity. The open and tolerant Islam preached in Morocco. On this place of worship dedicated to devotion at the Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca, it is one of the most important days of the year, the Eid el-Kabir. It is the end of this journey. I reunited with my family. I reacquainted myself with my country. I rediscovered the meaning of ancient traditions. And I saw the future. All these different canvases of Moroccan history woven together to create a unique country. Being together, living together in diversity.